everyone. Welcome to Unchained, your no-hype resource for all things crypto. I'm your host, Laura Shin. In case you haven't heard, I have another crypto podcast called Unconfirmed. It's shorter, newsier, and comes out Fridays. If you haven't yet, go subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts. Also, find out what I think are the top stories in crypto by signing up for my weekly newsletter at unchainedpodcast.com. Are you passionate about blockchain but fall short on the technical skills to build and deploy blockchain applications? Then check out SimbaChain, the smart contract as a service blockchain simplification layer on simbachain.com, and their new enterprise offering on the Microsoft Azure Marketplace.
Kraken is the best exchange in the world for buying and selling digital assets. It has the tightest security, deep liquidity, and a great fee structure with no minimum or hidden fees. Whether you're looking for a simple fiat on-ramp or leveraged options trading, Kraken is the place for you. CipherTrace cutting-edge cryptocurrency intelligence powers anti-money laundering, blockchain analytics, and threat intel. Leading exchanges, virtual currency businesses, banks, and regulators themselves use CipherTrace to comply with regulation and to monitor compliance.
My guests today are Sebastian Sonntag, the new CEO of LocalBitcoins, and Mika Impola, software developer at LocalBitcoins. Welcome, Sebastian and Mika.
Hello. Nice to see you, Laura.
Most listeners have probably heard of LocalBitcoins, but they may not be fully aware of what it does or how it works. Sebastian, can you describe LocalBitcoins?
Yeah, so LocalBitcoins, in a sense, of course, it's a place where people can trade with Bitcoin. So they can buy and they can sell Bitcoins. But the LocalBitcoins in core is that it's from people to people. And of course, it's a bit different than exchange. So our idea is that it's a bit similar to Craigslist, what especially the US users probably know pretty well. So it's kind of a place for Bitcoin people to meet and create an advertisement that I want to buy Bitcoin, I want to sell Bitcoin. But that is basically what the LocalBitcoins is about.
And Mika, can you walk me through one example of how a buyer and a seller transact on the platform?
Yes. So the buyer, let's say that I want to buy Bitcoins, and so I go to the LocalBitcoin site and create the account to our service, and with that account I get this Bitcoin wallet as part of it, this account. And with this Bitcoin wallet I can transfer Bitcoins in and out. So after that, I can search for advertisements on localbitcoins.com, and when I find a suitable advertisement, let's say, for example, that I want to use Swift to settle the payment for the Bitcoins, so I will search for advertisements that advertise selling of the Bitcoins with Swift payment. So after I have found a suitable advertisement from the site, I will start the trade by replying to that advertisement, and what happens then is that the amount of Bitcoins that I am about to buy will go to our escrow wallet, and then as we are now doing the payment as with the Swift, I will make the transfer to the seller of the Bitcoins using the Swift network, and once we both, me as a buyer and the seller of the Bitcoins, agree that the Swift payment is done, we both mark the payment and the trade as done, and at that point the localbitcoins.com service escrow wallet releases the Bitcoins to me, to my LocalBitcoins account wallet, where I can then withdraw them if needed.
And so you named Swift as one example of ways in which buyers can pay, but what are, and I was going to say, what are all the ways in which buyers can pay? But obviously, you don't need to list every single one, but just give some examples of the full range.
Yeah, well, Swift, Kiwi, Alipay, M-Pesa, it really doesn't matter what is the settlement type. I mean, if users have some unknown or new payment method in their local area, they can also agree to use that one. So we don't, in a sense, limit the other part of the trade.
So it's just whatever the seller is willing to accept.
Yeah, well, mostly. Of course, there are some aspects there which we are limiting there because of the safety of the users and so on. But it's pretty much open for the users to decide that how they exchange the other currency, not the Bitcoin, but the other currency.
And what would be an example of a way that's unsafe to pay with?
Yeah, so the cash trades was actually disabled during the spring. And there was actually kind of a lot of news, especially from our competitors, noticing that we have removed the cash trades from them. There were actually small discussion in the company if we should keep it and how people will see it. But then again, it was very limited how many people were still using it. So we really didn't see that it as important anymore. But it was also that there are problems with the cash trades because when you are using escrow service, the whole idea is that you don't completely trust the other party. If you would trust completely the other party, then you don't need the escrow service. You can transfer Bitcoins directly wallet to wallet. But when you need the escrow service, there is not complete trust between the parties. And of course, if you have to meet the person face to face to trade the cash, it's a really problematic safety issue. But then it's also really hard to prove that the cash has been traded. What if the other party says that I did transfer the cash? The other party says, no, it did not happen. So there is really hard way to prove these kind of cases.
So essentially it was kind of because it would be like difficult to resolve disputes that was kind of removed as one of the options?
Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons. There was also regulation push. It was not really happening, the regulation during that time, but the main reason was that it was the safety and the dispute. It did cause us costs, but then again, kind of the benefits and use was very limited. Actually, Mika has some numbers also related to how popular the cash trades was.
Mika, what percentage of transactions were cash trades?
When we eventually decided to stop supporting cash trades on our platform, the amount of revenue that was generated from the cash trades was less than 0.5% of the company's revenue. So it was just this really small branch that we kind of like decided to cut down. I mean, there is no justification for the overhead of the service. So.
And was it more popular, though, in certain geographies? Like in a particular country, for instance, might it be, I don't know, like 20% of the transactions there, even if it was only 0.5% of your revenue overall?
And there wasn't a clear market area or anything like that where it was used more than in the other places. It was more like where we had users anyway. There were always a couple of cash traders also there. So there wasn't like, it was quite steadily spread amongst the markets.
Okay.
We were like present. But these cash trades in all, it's really confusing topic to me. I mean, when I'm out there in the wild encountering other Bitcoiners and they learn that I work for the local Bitcoins, we usually start talking about local Bitcoins, and many times they talk about this thing that people meet in some places and they exchange cash for Bitcoins, and that's really like confusing for me because I don't see local Bitcoins doing that. I mean, we haven't that is not what local Bitcoin does. Well, it's not completely true. Yeah, yes, you can do also that, but people who does that is so small percentage of our users that you could also think of it as non-existing. But I do understand where this all is coming from. I mean, in the summer of 2013, the majority of our traders were cash traders, but already in the end of the 2013, cash traders were only 1/3 of the customer base. And when we come to the year 2016, the number of cash traders was like less than 5% of our users. So we might be considered as platform where cash trades were done long time ago, but I mean, well, long time ago. In a Bitcoin world, 3 years is a very long time, I think.
That is definitely true.
But I mean, there comes time to every company to like streamline the business and concentrate to the core of the business. And when you have something that is used like or is generating less than 0.5% of the company revenue, and you are in this streamlining mode, those things just like get cut off.
Yeah, I also vote for that because, of course, the company mission is to bring Bitcoin to every city of the world or allow everybody on the planet to trade with Bitcoin. So in that picture, the cash trades is not important. It's the other matters that really matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably some of the anger that you kind of experience from some of the users or some Bitcoiners about this is that I think there are people who view your service as somewhat political, at least in concept. The idea of allowing people to trade peer-to-peer typically means, more anonymously. And under certain jurisdictions where perhaps people don't have very much financial freedom, that could be a very, very important service. And so, for them, I think that they view this as like an important kind of, it's almost like for them a political stance or something. But in a way, maybe I feel like the passion that they feel about that is sort of similar to just in general, where you notice in politics that there tends to be some people who feel passionately about one thing and then the majority of the population, unfortunately, doesn't, even if it's kind of a worthy stance. And so, so I think that's what I'm hearing, when you talk about the disconnect between what your users are saying and then how you see things from the business perspective.
And also, of course, what we have noticed is that it might be that in developing countries, what are kind of the core things that people are needing there in case of Bitcoin is a bit different than in Western world. So, for example, the cash trades, I understand is that there is the idealistic way of viewing it, but if you are in developing countries and you kind of want to, for example, save money and save it from the inflation, I don't know if they consider cash option or not. It's more important that there is the option to kind of save yourself from the hyperinflation, for example.
But that's actually why I was asking about whether or not cash trades were more popular in certain geographies, because in some of the developing countries, are there kind of like, are there enough options for payments for people? Do you know what I'm saying? Like in certain geographies, is it the case where cash is one of the main ways that people transact? And if so, is that kind of preventing people in that country from getting access to Bitcoin?
Yeah, that is actually a really interesting question. Of course, like I said, and actually Mika mentioned that, of course, we based our decision on data and we were looking that it's going down. And even though there were more people from everywhere in the world coming inside, they were using less cash trades. But that is really interesting because, of course, there might be that there is huge market out there who are only able to use cash trades. And that is, I really feel that is really important, because if there is that kind of user group, there should be a Bitcoin service for them as well.
Yeah, I would like to argue that if we consider those countries which are experiencing hyperinflation, they don't like to use cash because you have to use so big piles of cash. It's easier to use some kind of bank transfer or mobile money. And also what we see in the developing countries is that they are in many ways leapfrogging to mobile money and mobile minutes and all these apps that you can use on your phone from your phone, and people are actually using those kind of payments methods instead of cash.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but this is a really interesting topic, and of course, if I understood correctly, there is, of course, UN is making research on this, but of course there is this kind of societies and research organization also researching, because I have to admit that me or the company, of course, we are not really the specialists to understand that how in developing countries people are behaving. So, of course, if we would understand a bit better how they are using Bitcoin and how they kind of wish to use the Bitcoin in future, of course, that is also our vision that we could give them a service. But it's really hard, of course, to really know how people in different markets and different areas are using.
Yeah, and I actually think one other kind of difficulty in trying to do this research is that I imagine when people are not under duress, that then, of course, they're happy to use these different services. But if you look at what happened in Hong Kong recently with the protests there, as you know, a lot of Hong Kongers were using cash to pay for their subway tickets to go to the protests rather than using any sort of payment method that could be identified back to them. And so, you know, these, like, you, instead of just generally looking at, you know, like developing countries or something, it would need to be maybe more specific, like geographies that are undergoing some kind of political upheaval where they don't feel comfortable transacting with their identities, something like that. So I understand it would need to be something where you would need to be in kind of the right place at the right time to get the full picture.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that is why, you know, there's some pushback on this, because I think some people who like the idea of peer-to-peer trading of local Bitcoins then understand that if it's not offered the cash transactions, then in times of duress, then people won't have that option. So actually, let's just go back, though, to the very beginning of how LocalBitcoins got founded.
I think the founder of the company, Jeremias saw or tried to like find ways to buy Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin, and kind of like didn't find any good services, and so he decided to create this Craigslist type of place where you can advertise buying or selling, and thus the first version of the LocalBitcoins was created, and it was really like done in a few weeks or something like that, and in the beginning of LocalBitcoins, there was no way of creating any revenue, and it was maybe in half year after the beginning or 1 year after the beginning that the escrow service was introduced, and with the escrow service, the company was able to generate the revenue as we charge like 1% of the amount of escrowed Bitcoins during the trade. And basically that's the basis of the company that we still are running, providing the advertisement space and providing the escrow as a service when users are making the trade.
And you charge that fee to the seller, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so are there any other services that you have begun to offer over time? Or is that really, just kind of your bread and butter and that's the main way that LocalBitcoins makes its revenue?
There has been LocalBitcoins ATMs at some point, and we had this invoicing service at some point, and maybe there are others that I am not that well aware of, but we are kind of being focusing and streamlining and to the main product and trying to do it as good as we can.
And how has usage and reach of your platform changed over time?
Yeah, we did actually, if we check the volume, so how much there is transaction ongoing on the platform. And this is probably really interesting for the listeners as well. So there are public sources where you can compare different exchanges and trading points and services like LocalBitcoins, CoinDance. And there we can see that, of course, before 2017, the market was much smaller, but it was growing steadily. And of course, 2017, the growth was insane during that year. But the interesting part, at least to my eye, is that, of course, there was the price surge. It ended was it $17,000 per Bitcoin. Then it did drop down, but the volume of LocalBitcoins has remained pretty much the same as average of 2017, and that is insane. And Mika actually noticed something really interesting about if the Bitcoin price remains. So if Mika, you can share it.
Yeah, so I think that we have this steady growth. We have had this steady growth from the beginning of the company, and it just seems to be growing and growing. But one thing that affects the speed of the growth is that if the Bitcoin price is moving, we seem to have more growth. So when the Bitcoin price is going down, we have a little bit more growth. And when the Bitcoin price is going up, we have a lot more growth. When the Bitcoin price stays somewhat stable, we still have a growth, but it's not that big when the price is actually moving a lot of. So basically, you could say that we are growing with the Bitcoin.
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, being kind of like an on-ramp, as the price grows, that reflects more people coming into the system. So, and, obviously we've been talking about kind of the way the platform has changed over time. And Sebastian, so why did LocalBitcoins change its CEO at this time? Previously, the CEOs were, it was Jeremias, the founder, and then also I think Nicholas, I guess, is his brother.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of like the first sort of outside CEO. So why did that change happen?
Yeah, so the background story, Jeremias and Nicholas, they founded the company. And Jeremias was CEO until 2016 or 17, around that time. And since then, the CEO has been Nicholas. And now, actually, already last year, Nicholas has been talking that he's more interested, kind of the vision where the Bitcoin market is going, where Bitcoin is going. Of course, the company, it has really grown on a huge one. It's not anymore kind of a startup mode. There are kind of a lot of position, lot of human resource management and whatever. And Nicholas says that he's more interested to deal with the Bitcoin, understand that one. It was actually a bit the same story with Jeremias, what he has been saying. So they are interested kind of the big picture and not really maintain the human resources and stuff like that. That is one thing. And of course, it's also that when you have pair of fresh eyes. Of course, you get a different view of the company. So new person, it's easy to notice if they are kind of position that needs to be filled out. If they are kind of lacking something, if some people are stressed out because they have too much to do, if there are some people who don't have enough to do. So, of course, it's easier for somebody new to come and help that one.
Sebastian, you recently started as CEO. What were you doing before, and how did you get into Bitcoin and come to LocalBitcoins?
Yeah, actually, I have a PhD in technology. Way back in the years, I was already interested in Bitcoin already 2012 or something. I was mining Bitcoin myself. But then I got more interested after technical career to business side, and I went for the business management, and I founded a couple of companies, and then I've been in the past 3-4 years in the management of different companies, also board members in different Finnish companies. But I have been following the Bitcoin and especially the LocalBitcoins closely because LocalBitcoins is the biggest Bitcoin company in Finland. That is, and of course, early on I was not as interested when it was in gray area, especially these companies. But now when the regulation is coming, finally the companies are turning from the gray area to white area. So of course, it's also easier for me to as a business manager to come this kind of companies who are going to be really official companies. And what else is there to say? I really think that the Bitcoin is, of course, itself is really interesting. It seems to be helping people around the world. And LocalBitcoins itself is a really, really interesting company. It's the, how do you say, missionary or settler of the area. So it's really bringing kind of Bitcoin to those people who don't have access yet.
And Mika, what about you? How did you come to work at LocalBitcoins?
Yeah, so I think I found Bitcoins first time around year 2012, and in the beginning of, it was this on and off thing for me. I would spend some time studying it and then forgetting it for a while and so on. And I did some mining. I traded a little, made a trading pot, and that didn't work, and got some altcoins and so on. Lost Bitcoins to scammers and hackers and just by my own mistakes. So basic stuff, the normal mistakes, and the process of learning Bitcoin and figuring out what it actually is by experimenting with it. But I think it was in the beginning of 2015 that I finally decided to get into Bitcoin and pursue a career in Bitcoin. And I started by getting some ATMs and trying to find locations to them. And it didn't go anywhere, but I made some friends, and quite soon after that I ended up working for LocalBitcoins own ATM project. And that project, the company decided to concentrate to the main product, and the ATM project was shut down. But I stayed around and started working and helping on the website and coding and mostly maintaining our server and Bitcoin infrastructure is what I've been doing ever since.
And actually, just to go back to earlier when we were kind of discussing the philosophical stance or the political stance, and you talked about how they really wanted to do the peer-to-peer trades. And so why was it that they didn't think, why don't we just pull this liquidity and create kind of a more typical exchange? Like, what's the reason for that?
Yeah, so the mission actually, it was pretty old one, that they bring Bitcoin to every city of the world. And of course, they really feel why they are in Bitcoin, at least, of course, this is my view, why they are for Bitcoin. They might have a different story, so take a bit of salt hearing me saying what they wanted. But of course, the mission was early on to bring Bitcoin to every city of the world. And of course, if there is an exchange, like there are a lot of exchanges, it really makes sense because the price kind of sell and buy price is close to each other. Of course, the transaction costs are low. But then the problem is that there is usually only one way to buy it. You buy directly from the exchange and so on. And if you go in different areas, different markets, the problem is with financial inclusion. So we already mentioned, for example, that if you are Venezuelan actually I have to admit that, for example, for my parents, even in Finland, it might be a bit hard for them to kind of buy something from the stock exchanges, but then exchanging with the people to people, it's a lot easier. But especially if you go areas like Venezuela, it seems that it's easier for people to trade each other than to go with the stock markets. And it's probably due to how the, not Bitcoin currency, but the other currency is involved.
All right. So in a moment, we're going to discuss some other kind of news issues with local Bitcoin, such as stopping services in Iran and some of the changes to its platform. But first, a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible.
Will the world follow France and advocate banning privacy coins? Will government-backed stablecoins become the new fiat? Are distributed and peer-to-peer exchanges just a flash in the pan? The answer is maybe. Virtual currencies can flourish and create a new, private, and more versatile economy. But that grand vision can't happen without keeping crypto clean. And that requires support of governments and accountability for bad actors. Privacy-enhanced compliance using cryptographic controls has the potential to preserve anonymity without compromising legitimate investigations. CipherTrace is working on this vision of the future. Sign up to stay up to date on the Privacy-Enhanced Compliance Initiative and receive authoritative crypto AML reports quarterly. www.ciphertrace.com/keepcryptoclean. Today's episode is brought to you by Kraken. Kraken is the best exchange in the world for buying and selling digital assets. With all the recent exchange hacks and other troubles, you want to trade on an exchange you can trust. Kraken's focus on security is utterly amazing. Their liquidity is deep, and their fee structure is great, with no minimum or hidden fees. They even reward you for trading so you can make more trades for less. If you're a beginner, you will find an easy on-ramp from 5 fiat currencies. And if you're an advanced trader, you'll love their 5x margin and futures trading. To learn more, please go to kraken.com. That's KRAKEN.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Simbachain. Do you have a blockchain idea that could benefit your organization, but are you not sure where to begin? Then go to Simbachain.com. Simbachain's API-based approach simplifies blockchain for developers and provides a simple web application that empowers business analysts, domain experts, managers, and executives to design their smart contracts. Simbachain supports Ethereum, Quorum, Stellar, and many more to come. They turn business analysts into API designers and non-blockchain developers into blockchain developers. Check out Simbachain.com to quickly build your blockchain application. Back to my conversation with Sebastian Sonntag and Mika Impola. So we were just talking about kind of why the founders wanted to do peer-to-peer exchanges. And I just also wondered, do you know from the user's perspective, like the buyers and the sellers, why they choose to do trades this way rather than on an exchange?
Yeah, don't really know the reason. I don't know if you have done studies on the reason, and probably it differs from the market and from people to people. And to be honest, I don't know if it's our place to really ask people. Of course, if we want to develop the service forward, of course, we have to understand better why and how the service is being used. But we have not really studied that too well. And of course, when mentioned that the background with the founders of the company and why they had this trade system is that it was really early on when they founded it. They were really early adopters with Bitcoin and with the company. So of course, during that time, there were no exchanges and they find their position with this peer-to-peer trading. And of course, because there are a lot of competition between Bitcoin exchanges, it doesn't really make sense to try to turn local Bitcoins yet another exchange.
And back in May, I had Vera Xavier, LocalBitcoins community manager, and Elena Tonoyan, chief customer success officer, on my other podcast, Unconfirmed. And at that time, they told me they were seeing about 40 to 50,000 trades a day and about maybe 500,000 active users every month. What are the usage numbers now?
Yeah, they have been stayed pretty much the same. I mean, like I earlier said, that seems like we grow with the Bitcoin. So I think the Bitcoin price has also stayed pretty much the same.
Yeah,
same. So that's why the growth of the users is not that much from the May.
Yeah. Also, it's a short period of time. And what's the breakdown between developed and developing countries?
Yeah, it seems when we were checking that what currencies people are using for the kind of when they are trading the money, we have noticed that it might be a bit more users in developing countries than in the.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And when you say that, are you talking about number of transactions as opposed to the amount of the transactions? Or just number of users?
I was actually, it's a volume, so not number, but really kind of how many Bitcoins is exchanged.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's actually pretty remarkable because then, you would expect that in developing countries, the amount of Bitcoin is higher per capita simply because they're probably wealthier countries. But if in the developing countries, they're kind of exceeding the amount, not just from a number of transactions perspective, but from the BTC amount, then that means that there's pretty significant trading on your platform in developing countries.
Yeah, and I would guess that the one reason is due to these exchanges, because of course it's possible and it's easy to use them in the developed countries. But of course, if you are in developing country, it's a bit more hard to use exchange. That might be one reason.
Right.
Also, I would like to make a point maybe to the earlier question or also that is related to this, why we have users so much in the developing countries, is that I imagine that in developing countries, you don't necessarily have, for example, a bank account, so to speak, but you have maybe some mobile payment method like M-Pesa or something like that you use on your phone and there isn't really exchanges providing like on and off ramps from that mobile payment method. So if you want to get out of that, if you want to get Bitcoins, you would have to have that bank account that you don't have. So you need to use us because through us, you can find someone who is using the same mobile payment method, and thus you have like this direct route to transfer your value from that mobile payment method directly to Bitcoins and wherever you want to go from there. So
yeah, it's, I guess what is probably very appealing about LocalBitcoins is that it's pretty, I don't want to say customizable to your local geography, but what I mean is it's very flexible. So, if you're in one country and you have this particular way where you keep your money, then instead of being limited to whatever few payout options and exchange offers, you can just keep browsing, this kind of Craigslist site to find somebody else who will accept your payment option. One other thing I definitely want to urge the listeners to do is in the show notes, I'll put a link to the charts of LocalBitcoins trading broken out by country, because when I looked at this, it was so fascinating. There are certain trends that you see, and then there's just like certain outliers where, whatever was going on with trading in that country was just particular to what was going on in that country. And what I mean by that is that the charts basically show trading volume, by country over time. And so there are a few trends I noticed where, these tend to be stable economies, and essentially the trading was all fairly low volume for quite a long time. And then a spike in trading at the end of 2017, early 2018, and then a drop back down to fairly low levels, kind of. And the for people who want to look this up, like Switzerland, Norway, New Zealand, they all kind of exhibited that sort of chart. And then there was another type of pattern I noticed amongst somewhat kind of probably, I guess, what you would call troubled economies, where the volume just sort of somewhat steadily goes up, like, for instance, Argentina, Mexico, Venezuela. But then, aside from those trends, there are just a whole bunch of charts that really don't look like any of the others. And that it was just really fascinating to see that. So there's no question to this, unless you guys have a comment on that. But I was so fascinated when I was looking at these charts. Oh, and actually the one other comment I wanted to make was that the US has a very, very fascinating chart, because it just shows so much more trading than any of the other charts, which, I guess kind of reflects that the US is the biggest market, at least for peer-to-peer trading of Bitcoin. But anyway, do you guys have any comments about these charts?
Well, yeah, I also encourage people to go and look those charts and maybe like once a week go and see what's happening there, because you can actually get this feeling that you saw this little spike in some of the charts, and then you start wondering what is going on in this country, and you Google, and then you find out. It's like you can little bit predict the news from those charts.
Do you remember any particular news events, that you noticed via looking at the chart?
I actually noticed that, of course, I was already interested in local Bitcoins, and we already had these interviews ongoing and so on. But there was this Venezuela, and of course there were a lot of news ongoing about the Venezuela. And in the same time, I could see from the coin dance that, hey, there is more and more transaction ongoing in Venezuela. So at least for me, this was a really astonishing moment, kind of that it can really help people in that area.
But I have a question about the Venezuela one, which I saw the New York Times reporter who covers crypto tweeted about this, because since the chart is denominated in Venezuelan bolivares, then obviously the value of that is decreasing. Mm-hmm. So does the chart reflect actual increase in trading volume, or is it simply reflecting that it takes more bolivares to buy a Bitcoin than it used to? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, but if we are still talking about the coin.dance service, you can actually switch the nomination to BTC from the right upper corner of the chart. So then it's, of course, gets a little bit difficult. Then you need to remember what was the price of the Bitcoin back then, and so on. But we do provide a public coin.dance is using our public API to create these charts. So if there are some ways to improve them, you are welcome to try out and get the data for yourself and try to figure out how to present it more nicely.
Yeah. Hey, one thing about this, of course, it's also really interesting what we have been following is that how the Bitcoin itself behaves now. There is a turbulence on the world markets, and it's really interesting. Of course, there's also news from the big economic magazines as well, that it's interesting that the Bitcoin has started to act a bit like the gold, or kind of metal that keeps the price. And it's really interesting because we have on the history 2017 and even before learned that the Bitcoin is really volatile and whatever. And now it starts to work a bit more like a gold, which is probably not the most volatile asset you can get.
Wait, I'm sorry, you're talking about gold?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and that is probably the reason why, for example, in Venezuela, so if you kind of want to retain the value of whatever, for example, salary you are getting, and it might be, I don't really, because that is the problem that we don't really do studies that why Venezuelans are using, but it's just my hunch that it might be a reason that it's because there's a hyperinflation. So you need some way to kind of retain the value of your salary and so on. And Bitcoin might be an easy way to do that.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Vera in the last podcast I did, she was saying that some of the activity you're seeing from Venezuela is Venezuelans trading bolívares into USD via Bitcoin. And then when they need it, when they need the money, using Bitcoin to trade it back to bolívares. And actually what I did just now, I just looked up the BTC volume of trading in Venezuela, and it did spike quite high earlier this year in like March, roughly, it looks like, or maybe February. But it's back down now, frankly, actually. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder what's going on there. Oh, I know. It's because the Bitcoin price has gone up. Duh. Okay. So actually, let's move on to some other kind of changes that have been going on in your business. You know, LocalBitcoins obviously stopped offering services in Iran as well, which I don't know, you know, to my mind, and I think a lot of people who watch the crypto space, it sort of feels like there's kind of been a lot of changes at LocalBitcoins recently with stopping cash services, now stopping services in Iran, you know, bringing in this new CEO. So what happened with the Iran service, and how does that kind of fit into whatever new trajectory LocalBitcoins is on?
Yeah, about the CEO process didn't really reflect this, but a lot of these changes that has happened is there is a push from the regulation. Of course, finally, but anyway, the governments are seeing a Bitcoin, and of course they are acting, they are pushing a regulation and so on. And for example, Iran, we are using a lot of US services for different purposes. And now, because the Iran is on the list, there were companies, US companies who we are buying services, they were stating that we cannot continue doing business if we do business in Iran. And even though, of course, we didn't use these services in Iran, but only that we were giving a service in Iran was enough for them to be afraid. And of course, now we had to choose between two evils. If we continue supporting, for example, Iran, or there is a possibility that we have to shut down the whole service. And of course, if our mission is to bring Bitcoin to every city of the world, putting Iran down is not really serving that mission. But if we have to turn the whole service down, that is even worse scenario. So we had to choose between two evils. And of course, the regulation is happening, and also we are regulated and we will go under the regulation.
Yeah, and it's a new Finnish regulation that comes into effect in November, right?
Yeah.
And I know on the platform you're now implementing some changes to meet that regulation. How does that affect the users?
Yeah, so most notably they are this know your customer. And that's why there will be tiers. We have already announced that there will be tiers. And of course, depending that the tier, we have to know a bit more about the customer. Of course, one could argue it's only because of the regulation. But then again, if you read the ruling or the reasoning behind this regulation, is that the better the companies know their customer, better they are able to secure the funds. So it kind of makes sense also customer-wise, but of course it's really annoyance for the customers.
And the history of crypto obviously is littered with exchange hacks. LocalBitcoins is a little bit different, but LocalBitcoins did suffer a hack on its forums that enabled the hackers to post some phishing links. But because you manage these wallets for people, is that also a form of honeypot? Is that something where a hacker could obtain a number of Bitcoins at once?
Yes. So if you are, I don't know, I'm not going to go into details about the forum thing. Just saying that I think running a Bitcoin business is a little bit different than running any other web service, as there is money involved, and thus we seem to be under constant attacks from hackers. So it's been well, how to say, interesting in a way, and also very stressful as being a target, so to say. And yes, we are custodial service. We held some of the Bitcoins of our customers, and unfortunately, that's how we need to operate this way. But we are, let's say, taking really big measures to make sure that our customers' funds are safe.
So I guess what I'm asking is, it sounds like obviously there's a way where individual people can be compromised, but then it sounds like from what you're saying, there is also a way where local Bitcoins can be compromised, and that then exposes all of the users' funds. Is that correct?
Yes, you are correct that the easiest way to get hacked on local Bitcoins is by making mistake on yourself, like as a user, and most of the hackers seems to target the users themselves more than the actual service, and to fight that, we of course educate our users, and I think we have many system in place to catch those kind of operators and trying to protect our customers. But like any other exchange, we are also holding customer funds, and thus, yeah.
And so you're doing that not only during the period of escrow, but then also if people keep their Bitcoins in their local Bitcoins wallet. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I think I didn't fully understand how it was set up. All right. So one other question I wanted to ask about was, for the Bitcoin Cash fork, at that time, LocalBitcoins made this decision to convert that money into Bitcoins for the users. And then they simply added that money to the user's balance and subtracted a little fee for doing that. But then it also said it would not in the future support any airdrops or forks. So obviously, since that time, there's definitely been other forks and airdrops. I don't even know if I could count. But if LocalBitcoins isn't giving that money to its users, are you guys just leaving it sitting there unused, or are you accessing it, or what are you doing with that money?
No, we are not using it, but I mean...
Yeah, by the way, about these forks, of course, sorry being a CEO here, what forks there have been actually since the Bitcoin Cash?
Oh, sorry. You know what I was thinking of was the further Bitcoin Cash fork. So you're right. If it was converted, then that's no longer associated
because
with Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
But I was thinking of Bitcoin
because it was
Gold,
because Bitcoin Cash was, if I understood correctly, it was exchanged to Bitcoin for the users.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Right. But so what happens to, for instance, like Bitcoin Gold or something, which happened afterward?
Well, I think we have made it clear that we don't. This was a one-time thing that we decided to credit the users for the money from the fork, and and we don't plan on doing it in the future, and we haven't done it after that. And it's, I think there's no more to say about it.
Okay, but you're also not accessing the funds, so they're just sort of sitting there.
Yeah, we are not accessing the funds. It's easy to check if you don't believe me, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and people can't withdraw them themselves, I guess. So will local Bitcoins just always stay with Bitcoin, or would you ever consider adding any of the other crypto assets?
Yeah, if I now recall correctly, we are supporting some. What is the payment method we are actually supporting? Of course, not with the escrow, but as a payment method, we are supporting something. But the stance is at the moment that the Bitcoin is leading the cryptocurrency pack, and that's why we are also using it, because, of course, supporting other cryptocurrency is a cost for us, and our mission is being these new markets, which is they are probably not speculating on cryptos as much, they are using it for other purposes. So at least the current stance is that we stay with Bitcoin.
And Sebastian, as the new CEO, what plans do you have for local Bitcoins?
Yeah, so of course, because our mission is to provide Bitcoins trading for every city of the world, every people on the planet. And like we have actually stated, this has been actually a really interesting interview, because we have been discussing that we really need to understand the needs of the people who are using Bitcoins. And it really varies on different markets. And of course, this is kind of studying what are the needs for different customer, different markets, different people for Bitcoins. And then we try to serve those so that the more people on the world can access and trade Bitcoins.
All right. And I also wanted to ask about how you guys are based in Helsinki. What is the Bitcoin or overall crypto scene? What is that like in Finland?
Well, I could point out one thing that seems general people seems to forget is that the second developer on Bitcoin after Satoshi or with Satoshi was a guy using the handle Sirius, which is also known as Martti Malmi, who is from Finland in Helsinki. Martti Malmi doesn't seem to be active in the scene anymore, but as far as I know, he still owns the bitcoin.org and bitcointalk.org domains. And as far as I know there were from 2012, 2013, there were active Bitcoin meetups in Helsinki, and there are still active once in a month, I think. We have a Bitcoin meetup here, and there are people there. So we are a small country, and but we've been in a Bitcoin for a long time, I think. And if you have been interested in Bitcoin, you can always find someone to share your Bitcoin enthusiasm here in Finland.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for coming on Unchained.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about local Bitcoins, check out the show notes inside your podcast player. If you're not yet subscribed to my other podcast, Unconfirmed, which is shorter and a bit newsier, be sure to check that out. Also, find out what I think are the top crypto stories each week by signing up for my email newsletter at unchainedpodcast.com. Unchained is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Factual Recording, Anthony Yoon, Daniel Ness, Rich Stroffolino, and Josh Durham. Thanks for listening.